Hello, welcome back to another pen talk. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're back on Chinese pens, and those of you familiar with my current fixation, these are Jinhao 51As, and they range from 99-cent versions here. In the middle are these phenomenal acrylics with the custom ground nib by Bobby, custom ground nib. Here's another acrylic one and two wooden ones. So this is an amazing variety. You know, you can eyedropper the ones that are resin. They all have the same cap, and they come with two different nibs, a hooded nib and then that standard Jinhao number 5 nib, which is, to me, first it showed up on the 992 when I became aware of it, and I think it's a great fine to medium nib that writes consistently well. So we're going to focus more on the two new ones that I received, which is the blue one here and the black wooden one. Here we are with the 51As disassembled. I did two different things. Here I just unscrewed the nib assembly, and here I pulled the nib and feed out. Both of them have the same type of converter, same section. Well made. It's that number 5 Jinhao nib, which I enjoy in the 992 and a whole bunch of other pens. And also as a number 5, it can be easily swapped out for any number of number 5 nibs, including some number 2 vintage Waterman nibs. One of the things that I thought would be a good interest is to look at this feed here, which is your classic injection molded plastic feed. There's a channel there at the back, which to me is where the ink is pulled up into the converter, and then there's a channel, very thin channel on the other side that feeds into the nib. That goes all the way through. In this assembly, none of those fins actually touch that feed except for that one right in the middle. And then you have this little extension which goes into the converter. Yeah, this is when it's assembled into this nib collar, Jinhao logo on there. Sometimes these are transparent. This one is black, which works okay with this type of pen. You know, this is a very dark wood with a very subtle grain in it, like a mahogany. And of course it has that nice brass insert with the metal threads on it, so in theory that'll minimize or avoid cracking there at the bottom. And this acrylic is just amazing, interesting, not something I've ever seen before. Works well, and I think we need to do the LED X-ray, and there the threads are just machined into the acrylic no metal insert. Here we go to show from the inside out. You can see some machining there. Nice plug at the end. This is definitely something that you could eyedropper. I'm just impressed. I mean, these are hand-poured acrylics machined on some type of probably computer-driven lathe, and just work well. I'm impressed with the variety that they've done with the 51A. Both of the wooden ones have a metal insert, kind of a brass insert, which extends a fair way down there to really stabilize the wood. Kind of interesting to get the right angle so you can actually see in there. But it definitely looks like these are pieces of wood that are machined and not pressed, which some people have mentioned as a possibility. Now we're going to take a little pendoscope journey into these wooden barrels, past the brass liner there, and we can see the rough inside, which to me is very typical of something made out of natural wood. Now we're going to take a look at the other barrel. That was the brown wooden one. Now we're going to go into the black barrel. And we see a similar type of inside, you know, the way it's been turned, that little spot at the end where the drill, whatever they used. Now we're going to take a look at the cap. And inside the cap we see a screw, which is not something I normally like to see, but it seems to hold in like an inner cap there. And this cap does fit very well on the barrel. And I've not had any issues with nibs drying out, as we see that screw very close up. Seems to fit in there well, which I think is why it stays, the nib stays wet. Here's what I consider to be 4 variants of the 51A. They all have identical clips as far as I can tell. This is the low end one, which I still think is nicely done. It comes in both solid and transparent colors. The section matches the color of the barrel. And it just has like a plastic clutch ring here, which is part of the mechanism when you cap it. And it caps very securely. And it doesn't seem to dry out, even though the pendoscope shows it may not be. It works, which is what really matters. And I think the translucent properties of this resin really look nice. And the nib writes great, as we'll see later on. Then we go to the wooden version, which then has a metal clutch ring. But when you unscrew the barrel, you'll see a plastic section there. And this is pretty tight, because I think the way they machined the inside, there's not a lot of room for that converter, but it does work. And these all have different weights, and I'll give you those weights. We'll show them next to the pens so you can get an idea. And this is that acrylic barrel, which again, when you uncap it, you see a metal ring here. And when you unscrew it, it's still the same plastic thread. So this section is the same, except this barrel doesn't have any metal inserts in it like the wooden one did. And then we go to this final acrylic version, which has the more traditional, I would call it, pen BBS resins that they've machined for the barrels. This also has a metal clutch ring, but when you unscrew the barrel, you'll see that there's actually that metal clutch ring is part of the whole metal section that is inside of this. It gives it a little bit of weighting towards the nib. And this is that nib that's been ground by Bobby, so it has a really nice writing experience. And this is also the heavier pen of the group. So I just think it's interesting how they've taken this simplistic form factor and added a lot of variety to it and given us some different writing instruments with different nibs and different weights, which change the way that they write. I would have been remiss if I didn't actually show another variant of the pen. This is the solid resin one. Again, these are all under $2. But when we take a look at what the section's made out of, it's actually a clear plastic. So this is pretty much an ink window there. You don't need that in the transparent model because you can see the ink. So I think that's an interesting feature that certainly belies the inexpensive nature of the pens. And these two, even though they have that pen BBS resin in the barrel, are also 2 different versions of this pen. The one in coffee autumn style on the top here has the ground Bobby nib in it, while the one below just has the standard nib in it. I really love the Bobby nib, but I really like the other nib, so you don't really miss out, and there's about $3 of difference between these two. And you can both get them with these different colored resins. There are 2 or 3 of them around. We'll show you what's available on eBay. So again, variations upon variations, but it certainly lends itself to the interesting nature of these pens. So these are pens I would generally write with posted. You know, this is your standard 51A grip. You can hold it anywhere. The size is fine. I hold it about here for long writing sessions, but what's nice is you can move your fingers up and down, so hopefully you don't get cramped or bored with one position. I mean, overall, this writes well. I had it uncapped for a while, and sometimes when you first touch paper, ink doesn't come out, but it comes out relatively quickly. And this is Robert Oster Frankly Scarlet, and the nib is probably on the dry side. As you can see, that ink dries almost instantaneously. So I mean, for me, for like $1.50, this is a great buy. This is a great pen. I put this nib up there with the 618 nib, another hooded nib that I like. You're not going to get any wow out of this, but you'll get a consistent writer, great everyday carry. You know, to me, it's a nib pen that you uncap and just start writing with it. You don't have to worry about what paper you're on. As you can see, it's pretty dry, so it's going to work well on almost any paper. So this is the wooden one that has, or did have originally, the Jinhao No. 5 nib on it, but I swapped it out for this 0.7, which is a little bit of a stub, but I just wanted a little bit different writing experience with this pen. As you can see, it lays down a wider line. There's not a lot of stub characteristics to this, but it's just a nice medium nib. Very smooth. A little bit wetter than the standard hooded nib, but then it's a wider nib, and you would expect that. And this is Robert Oster Striga Rot. In my original reviews of these pens, I discussed the inks and everything else. So, you know, this works well. I enjoy this pen. It's a pen I can carry around with me when I want something a little bit different than the standard extra fine. So now we finish with the better nib of the group. I mean, this is very smooth. Lays down a really nice line. This is another pen that I carry with me and use regularly. There's not a lot of variation between horizontal and vertical, just a little bit, but this is just such a joy to put on paper. This is Paupière Plume Violet. Looks nice in this pen with this light that we have coming in here. So overall, I would give all these a rating of 9+, with this one here that I'm writing with now being like a 9.4. So they're just nice everyday pens. Can fit a variety of budgets, you know, ranging from $1.50 to close to $8. And you need to look around, make certain that you buy what you want. Study the auctions carefully, read the descriptions, etc. So we've reached the end of this video, so thank you for watching. Hope you have many great writing experiences. Explore this incredibly wonderful world of pens that we have the great opportunity to partake in through many different ways and levels, and enjoy putting ink on paper. So we've reached the end of this one. We're going to say bye for now. Until the next one. Like the ink.